in search of the ideal partnership. How to find a game deal, all right? Finding the right partnership to develop your project is essential for your game to move from the prototype to become a released title. In this panel, Julia Kenny, Content and Partnerships Manager at SEGA Searchlight, will talk about funding options available to independent studios and will give tips on how to strategically approach partners to impress and attract success. All right, so the session is in English, and if you want to listen it in Portuguese, just please access the right link here at the channel. Okay, so please let's welcome Julia Kenny, Content and Partnerships Manager at SEGA Searchlight. How are you, Julia?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. It's a nice sunny evening here, so I'm looking forward to talking. How are you?
Oh, that's good. Well,
Yeah.
it is actually a really nice day here in Brazil, so good for us, I guess.
Yeah, we're all sharing the sunshine. That's good.
Yeah, that's actually so sweet. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Julia. The screen's yours.
All right, thanks very much. So can you see the screen that I'm presenting?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're seeing it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Would be bad to start talking otherwise. Thanks. All right, then, without any further ado, thank you so much for the introduction again. So, yes, I'm going to be talking about how to find a game deal. So, to give some spoilers, I'm going to introduce myself, then I'm going to talk about the different funding options that exist. After that, I'm going to talk about understanding your needs so you can find the right type of funding for you based on what you need. I guess a 101 to business development, getting started, like how do you get your foot in the door and how do you make those plans? A couple of tips on proper preparation, and then I'm going to talk about how SEGA Searchlight, fits into the search and why we would be a great partner for you. And then questions, I forgot to delete it, but that would be the questions part. So basically, I started working in SEGA late last year. I work for Searchlight, which is a division in SEGA Europe that focuses on incubation, on building long-term partnerships with studios. So we offer project financing, publishing, investment, and we look at loads of different teams and opportunities to hopefully find relationships that stick. And I do outreach, so I am scouting for developers all the time and trying to talk to developers to find, the next best relationship. I started in the games industry at Jagex, so they look for MMO free-to-play games. I really, really loved RuneScape, so that's how I started working at Jagex. And then I decided to go to the other side of the table and work for an agency called Rocket Ride Games. And there I helped clients, so game developers, find work for hire deals. I help them find investment and publishing as well. So I have some experience from all the angles about business development relating to content. And then I've got invisible walls here because they were the client that I worked with the most when I was working at Rocket Ride representing. So let's say special mention, close to my heart. And yeah, I've seen a lot of pitches. I've been around the block a few times, so hopefully what I introduce will be useful. So first, let's talk about the funding options that are there. So I've categorized them into 5 different things. So firstly, if we go quite generally, we've got project financing. So this will entail someone giving you money to help you finish your game. So money for the development of your projects. So you can access this through different project funds, maybe government grants and loans, platform funds and grants. So for example, Game Pass, generally Microsoft, PlayStation, the Epic Game Store. Sometimes there is money exchanging hands for exclusivity and things like that. You've got engine funds as well. So probably the most famous one is the Epic Mega Grant. And then crowdfunding. So thinking about companies like Kickstarter, thinking about Indiegogo, Fig, activating the community to pledge to help you raise the money to release your game. And then we've got the publisher. So in the context of this, I like to think about it as if it's a supercharged project financing machine. Basically, they also invest in your project, but they will offer services in exchange for a revenue share. So it might be localization, quality assurance, marketing, community management. Another way that you can unlock money to fulfill your game development dreams is through studio financing. So this is the more company-focused corporate way. In its simplest form, studio financing, you would be getting money in exchange for equity. So you would be selling shares of your company. So this can take the shape of maybe a minority investment. So, you might hear of Tencent buying 20% in some company or other. That's the minority investment kind of route. You have stock market listings. So if you do an IPO, basically publicly selling shares of your company. And then you've got investment rounds as well. So some you might have heard of would be angel investment, seed investment, and that it just kind of relates to at what point, at what stage your studio is kind of in its growth, and that will kind of depend on the label that is called and maybe the ballpark the amount of money that you get as well. Then you've got M&A, which is mergers and acquisition. So maybe we could say this is a slightly more finite funding option, a bit more final. So for an acquisition, you would sell your ownership of the company to another party in order to benefit from the infrastructure or maybe the money in the transaction as well, making you have more cash, able to have more cash to spend on projects. And then a merger, similarly, is the idea of kind of giving over the general direct control in order to achieve other goals. And then I've put prototype financing separately because even though technically it fits under the last four things, I just wanted to point out that it's quite hard to get funds just from a concept alone. So you can try these different avenues, but you may have to be a little bit more specific and set your expectations slightly differently. For example, most publishers will not fund a project to prototype and would want to see a playable build. SEGA actually, we're quite special in the sense that we do fund projects to prototype. But other than that, perhaps there would be other ways to get prototype funding, maybe a government grant or an Epic mega grant would be the first, small influx of cash to get that pre-production underway. And one that doesn't fit so much in the category but is important because yay, free money, is not forgetting to take advantage of government tax relief initiatives. So in the UK we have the video games tax relief, but across different countries there are loads of government incentives, whether it's national or regional, and some of them can be really, really good. So it's super important to check out what you have there. So I've talked about the funding options. I've tried to use vaguely the same color as these diamonds here. Thinking about now we have the categories, how do you know which ones you fit into? So if you ask yourself, these key questions, then you'll be able to filter out what will be most appropriate for you. So let's go through it. Firstly, do you have enough existing funds to develop your game? So maybe you've released a game before, maybe you have a really, really nice savings account. If you do, great. Still some things to consider though. So do you have enough confidence and resource to market your game in your chosen regions? Yes, great. That's good. The flowchart ends here for you. If not, you can see that I mentioned before, it's either marketing and certain regions, so there's several components to it. So let's say you're pretty confident about the marketing, but maybe you just need access to Asia, or you want to do physical copies of your game, but you don't have the means to do that, or you don't really have the experience. So for that, you would just look for a distribution deal. But then let's say that you don't feel confident about your marketing strategy and you just really want to focus, like it's great that you have the money to finish the game, but you really want to focus your money on just doing what you love, and that's development through and through. So then it would still be beneficial to you to find a publisher. You don't just need to be looking for money to find a publisher. And maybe you'll get slightly better deal terms as well because the publisher will have invested less. All right, now moving on. If you're not lucky enough to have existing funds to develop your game, the next thing that you should be thinking about is what type of partnership you're looking for. So perhaps your main priority is growing the team. So it's not just about the short term or even the midterm. You really need to have more team numbers to start to establish what you want to do. Maybe you don't have enough people in the core disciplines and you want all of that in-house. What you should then do, I would recommend, is look for studio financing. So again, this equity, money in exchange for equity thing might be good. From my own experience, obviously. And then next, maybe it's more about you want infrastructure and you want to be part of a network of teams, especially if you have existing revenue streams through other projects. This might be particularly interesting for you. Perhaps you have an existing revenue stream, but you don't have enough money to make the next game because it's that next step up in the budget scope. And so to unlock that next step, maybe you should talk to quite a big company about getting there. And there are benefits, there are trade-offs, and there are benefits to that. Okay, and now we go maybe just a bit simpler. If you just want help with the game that you're making, that's all you care about right now. The next thing that is worth thinking about is what development stage you're at. So if you just have a concept, then you should think about prototype financing. And that's why I called prototype financing out earlier as a specifically different thing, because your search has a different flavor to it than if you were just looking for project financing, because there are just less options. You have to be a little bit more specific. But if you have a build, a prototype, something to show, then you need to think about whether you want to do marketing, QA, localization, all those publishing functions in-house. If you're adamant on being self-published, you think that you can do it and you want to do it by yourself, maybe project financing, maybe talking to Kowloon Knights or something like that might be the way for you. And then if you don't feel confident that you have those capabilities, because it's so much and can be quite daunting, and again, like I said before, maybe you just want to focus on what you do best and let someone else pick up the expertise elsewhere, then you should look for a publisher. So that ends my flowchart. Now we've got an understanding of kind of what we're looking for. We need to think about how we're going to look for it. So another hat that you have to wear, okay, maybe you don't want to wear the publishing hat, maybe you do, but another hat that you have to wear as an indie developer is the business developer. So maybe you decide that you don't want to do that because business development is time consuming, and you're kind of on the front line and you need the resilience for people saying no all the time, potentially. So one thing you could do is sign with an agency. So I worked for an agent, so I can totally plug Rocket Ride Games, but just generally, there'll be people like Rocket Ride or DDM or other agencies that will take your game and pitch it to publishers for you and manage the business development there. So they would then get a commission when the deal was done, but it's definitely a route that could be worth it if that's where your priorities are. But if you decide that you want to do it by yourself, also admirable, also could be a good idea. You want to figure out your business development strategy. So firstly, let's think about like time sensitivity and the pressure there. So we've got, when do I want to be signed by, but then when do I need to be signed by? Working backwards to that moment where you run out of runway and thinking, yeah, what are those milestones where you need something to happen or you need some interest? I think this is quite good in terms of being able to be transparent with potential partners that you're talking to, be them publishers or investors, where at one point you do have to say, well, I need to have something agreed within the next 3 months or whatever. So those are key points in the calendar, in your own calendar of BizDev to note. And then you want to make a list of your investor targets. You want to research who you're going to talk to, and then you want to tier them. So you want to categorize them in order of importance to you. So maybe it's that they have a particular business model that is interesting to you. Let's say you want to make a free-to-play game, and so you're going to put Gamigo in a really high tier because they're a free-to-play publisher. Maybe you just really admire the philosophy of a particular company, so maybe it's Kowloon Knights, but you should tier them so you know where you should be focusing most of your energy, and then which ones are slightly less important to you. setting expectations. And then I think also it's important to establish a studio brand narrative. So why should people invest in my studio or project? Thinking about it like a soundbite, an executive summary. After you go away from a meeting that you have with an investor or a publisher, what's the spin? What are they going to say? Are they going to say, okay, this is a bunch of veteran developers who have their own technology and they want to do a new take on the stealth shooter genre? Or is it a promising bunch of students who have excellent ideas, want to take the next step into professional game development? They've won loads of awards on the conference circuit, and now is the time to get in and the beginning of a path to, very fruitful success. You want to convince people that it's a good idea. So I think that overarching narrative helps people feel comfortable embracing risk, as well as all the details that come with pitching. And then you want to make a plan regarding finding opportunities to pitch. So the natural thing is conferences, right? So that moves us on to conferences and the pitch circuit. Now we know who we want to talk to, we know why we want to talk to them, we know how. Now we need to make a plan of action for when. So there's a really, really good website, and the guy who put this together is also great, called www.gameconfguide.com, and that shows all the games conferences that are upcoming and happening. So I'd really recommend that you look at that. It's a great hub where everything is. Decide which ones you're going to go to, make a budget. Really good right now because of COVID. One of the good things of COVID, there's not that many, are there? But one of the good things of this situation is there's quite a lot of online conferences that are free. So the bar to entry is a bit lower. You don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars going to a particular location. So still good to make a budget and commit to which ones your key ones are. I think obviously conferences are good for helping you meet publishers and investors and that direct benefit where maybe you could get a deal out of it. But I think there are other types of people that you can meet there that will be might help you become successful in the long run. So you might meet a mentor who will give you advice on their experiences. You might meet champions, I call them champions. So they're championing your game and your skills. They're always going to have nice stuff to say about you, and they're always just going to give you good ratings, whoever they talk to. And then well-connected people. Maybe you're going to meet someone who has a really big network, and then in 18 months you're going to randomly talk to them, and they're going to introduce you to someone who you're going to work with for 5 years. Like, it's good to kind of make the plan and sow the seeds a little bit broad, and not just these are the 5 top publishers I want to meet with, no one else. And then we've got the thing that with conferences, the meeting systems for booking meetings, it just boosts your address book. It helps you talk to people that you wouldn't usually talk to, and kind of legitimizes strangers talking, where you might like cold contact someone on LinkedIn or whatever. It might be a little bit harder to have them reply to you. So this is a really good way. And then I would just say generally, it's not just conferences. Now all the meetings are online because we can't really go anywhere, especially internationally. So it's not going to be totally weird if you schedule something with someone outside of a conference. What I would say though is if you're doing cold contact, then if there's a way that someone is like a mutual connection, if you could ask for an introduction, it just gives you an even better chance for success. So then talking about proper preparation, and I decided to make proper preparation a hard thing to say on purpose. Anyway, so one thing to think about again, if you're thinking about the calendar of what you want done, it's good to think about making sure that the conferences you attend line up with key or recent beats in your development. So you have something to show, or you have an announcement to be excited about. Then I would say, like, really practically, specifically about conferences, don't book your meetings at the last minute because all the popular people will already be booked up. And then if you're an indie developer, please fill out your profile properly, because if your brand isn't known, then if you don't have a picture, if you don't have a description on the things you're making, the money you're looking for, people will just scroll past you. Like, it needs to be informative in that top line kind of way. And then when we're talking to reaching out talking about reaching out cold, even if it is on a conference platform, I think it's really good if you can send a link to a pitch deck or company deck, depending on the type of conversation, because then it gives the person who's opening it a chance to size up the opportunity. Maybe they might be more likely because they might know a bit, and then it's a more effective use of both of your time. And then lastly, you should tailor material packages that you're going to share to be relevant to the organization you're pitching to. So if you're talking to an investor, you want to have cap tables in there. If you're doing an epic mega grant online application, it's going to be a very different form, and you wouldn't use the same thing for everyone. So, that extra level of attention is really important. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on how great SEGA is and how SEGA can fit into all these categories. We're quite interesting in the sense that we're not just a publisher, but we have loads of different funding routes because we really just want to unlock that long-term relationship. However we get there, we just want to sow the seeds for us making franchises together for a long and wonderful time. So we have different streams such as prototyping, seed, publishing, minority investment, and we do M&A. So I would say, if you're looking for funding options, you should definitely get in touch with me or my team, and we'd be happy to take a look at your pitch or your overall vision for your company, because we're looking for games as a service games, PC console, franchise potential. So I had to do the plug. That's it from me. Thank you so much for your time, and I really hope that was helpful.
It totally was, Julia. Thank you so much for your time. You were great.
I need to use the screen,
I know it's hard to present something like only you and like a PPT, So I know it's hard, but you did great.
Thank you.
Would you like to add something else?
No, I think I got through everything, which is all that one can really hope for.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Julia.
Big Festival 2021, the biggest games festival in Latin America.